This is a reading from the notebooks by Maria Valtorta, 1945 to 1950. March 20th, 1946, for Father Migliorini. Jesus says, "For the just to obey is always the will of the Lord, but there is no other will in your departure, no other will of God. If I had another, I would contradict myself, for I wanted you here, alongside my spokesman, here, and not elsewhere." Maria, our poor Maria, wrote this on her own because she understood. I confirm it. I have prepared you for this hour with the visions of the departure of Syntyche and John. Read them carefully. You will hear the thought of your Savior. And to go in peace because you are in my grace, and this is all. The judgment of men does not affect our influence, or influence the judgment of God. Go in peace, son of mine and of Mary, in peace as regards yourself, in peace as regards poor Maria. I and my angel will take your place. And since for spirits there are no separations, there will still be 3 of us here, as there have been for 3 years, to do what is the glory of God, to make God known. I bless you, by the Father and the Holy Spirit, and myself as well, good servant, and with me the mother and the man of obedience, Joseph. Bless you, and the man of charity, John the Apostle, and all the saints from your order. Go in peace, for the angels of the Lord are with you, and God is with you. She later added in minute writing, on March 20th, 1946, it was that way. Then, on July 4th, 1946, Jesus wanted another spiritual guide for me. He knows why. I do not seek to find out. I would suffer too much if I knew. December the 9th, 1947. I have written the following for Father. My Father, I am very happy to be able to add the words of the Lord to my poor words as a creature who in the sight of God and men testifies that your assistance at my side, beginning in June of 1942 and willed by God, God definitely wanted this, was the preparatory stage for the ministry to which God destined me. Previously there was God and the creature's will to serve God, but there is still a lot of too much humanity in me, as you know, and God could not come. He, order where there was disorder. He, love, where there were resentments. You came and ordered everything, and God was able to act because you had come before. You were the forerunner, going ahead to prepare the ways of the Lord, and the Lord came, and he stayed, for you. Jesus said so one day and repeated it with your presence kept at a distance, the one who hates me because I am an instrument of God. Do you remember that dictation? I should now be fearful because you're going away, and Satan hates me more than ever, but I trust in Jesus' promise, and in your prayers, Reverend Father, and in those of the fathers in the order. You will read at your ease in the directions what I have been thinking for 22 days, gradually written during your first absence, and this will help you to understand me when I tell you that this pain is peace for me, and confirmation, and that I trust it will be a momentary darkening, like Jesus, from the evening of Holy Thursday until Easter morning. He taught us how to remain faithful, how to sweat blood without rancor towards those making us sweat it, and how to die on the cross to save. Let us imitate him. I give you my crucifix, the one that in July 1930, for the first time, gave me undeniable proof of the power of the cross and of faith, and my first victory against the devil. See the autobiography in connection with that period in her life. I allocated it to you in my will, for it is sacred to me because of what I obtained with it, and because it was in the hands of my dear ones at death. It was to have been placed in my hands, in agony and death, until the coffin was closed, and then to have been left with you. This means that if Jesus grants me the grace of dying with you nearby, you will bring it to me in those hours. And now I give you my thanks for everything, because of everything, as regards everything. You have never made me feel like I was an orphan and alone, sick, poor, and weak. You have been affection, help, peace, and support. Here and elsewhere, I will not forget you. I shall now feel I am alone on the earth. But I will say no more, otherwise the new Syntyche will lose the strength to hold up her cross, and the one belonging to her father. I must temper myself further, constantly, until dying in the effort, and have faith, faith, faith in the Lord. Maria. Mary says, we are close to the incarnation of the Word in me. I am the handmaid of the Lord. Let it be done according to his word, for even if it is not an order, it is a permission by God which is presented to us. What is presented to us is thus holy. Beloved son, beloved daughter, Romualdo and Maria, children of the ever sorrowful mother, because of the sorrows of her beloved children, say my word yourselves as well, and the most holy word will take shape in you more vitally than ever, to the point of making you other instances of himself. Be maternally blessed. And Saint Joseph says, and blessed by me, who always believed, and always did what the Lord ordered, in going, in returning, and in accepting, and I was guided by the angel of God, because I always subjected my human judgment to that of heaven. March 21st, 1946. Jesus says, before Romualdo leaves, and in order for him to leave with clear elements for responding, I will elaborate on what I indicated on March 3rd. Why did I advise Emma Federici to go away? I am virtually being accused of making a mistake. No, the superficial and the ignorant can believe and think that in those words, not I but others spoke, or that I was mistaken. I shall briefly speak to you about the justice and goodness of my counsel, as I mentioned in regard to the daughters of unknown parents. Footnote 207, August 18th, 1945. I know the state of hearts, and I know the capacities of hearts. I thus know what the woman is who just had to be Sister Gabriella of Mary Immaculate, without, however, wanting not to be Emma Federici any longer. Footnote 208. She added to the line, please use only the initials EF. This is the Lord's will. Here and below she crossed out the name Emma Federici and left only the initials. You now know Judas, don't you? Footnote 209, as presented in the work on the gospel. If he had remained the Jew he was, the one belonging to the temple, he would not have been without blame. But at least he would not have had in his spirit the sin of being the betrayer of God. Can you say I ever flattered him? I rejected him. I resisted. On several occasions I said, depart. It's better to be a mediocre Jew than an infamous apostle. But God can go no farther, out of respect for man's free will. And I went no farther. I sought to change the soul of the one who was obstinate in evil. Even though unable to delude myself, it was my duty as the master. I never failed to do my duty. I sought to provide help for this unfortunate, to work to save him, not because I was able to save him, but because it was my duty to try to, and above all to leave you an example of how to act with certain souls that are a mixture of good impulses and impulses which are not good. There is too little meditation on how deeply this teaching is concealed in the personality of Judas. For this reason, in this illustration of the gospel, which I am giving you, shedding light on the four gospels, so that you will love them, know and understand, I have thrown a great deal of light on the person of Judas, for in his darkness there is more material for the instruction of those charged with guiding men. And now let us talk about Emma Federici, who just had to be a religious, but who was unable to want to be a just religious. That is, a new being in whom the whole past was dead. Instead, everything was alive, though constricted under the monastic habit, and everything freely revived, and more violently than ever, because of a set of circumstances. Shall we list some of them? It was harmful for her to be the superior, and harmful to have been greatly praised, and harmful, immensely harmful, to be free from supervision by her superiors, because of the circumstances of war, the reaction of the self, constricted for so many years under an obedience which was not loved, which now felt itself to be no longer subject to control, involved the violence of a hurricane which nothing could mitigate. Oh, Romualdo, your word as a good spiritual master could not, or my words in dictations and visions, or those in special dictations provided to support her, as I gave caresses and missions to Judas, in order to be able to say, I have used all means to save him. When I said to her, go, it was because those individuals would at that point have lost their souls if they had remained where they were. There was rancor and rebellion in them, and they could no longer obey and respect, and the scandal would have been even vaster. The people who bewail what happened ought to bless God for allowing the matter to halt within those limits. And the 5 who went away ought to bless me. They can still make reparation and merit. Away from Camaiore. In Camaiore, in the order, they could not. It was over. I did not deceive, but I said, leave. You that know have seen that their will did not abide by any divine or priestly or enlightened counsel. They are thus punished. And you know I said, enough, for God is good, but does not let himself be trampled upon. I let them follow their stubborn path of acts of imprudence and disobedience, and out of mercy alone, continue to call them back to the right path. Pray for them, that mercy may not abandon them, especially her, the one who did not want to transform herself, except in words. Remember the very severe dictation. Footnote 210. See December the 2nd, 1945. She added an illegible date for the dictation and a reference to Jeremiah chapter 31, verses 21 and 22. And not even that was of any use. But neither you, Romualdo, nor you, Maria, should harbor remorse. Even if I'd come down from heaven, I would not have changed her heart. I am at the door to her heart, but I cannot go in, because she has filled it with herself, and not her God. I knock, and she does not hear, because inside she's full of her voices, not mine. Oh, pride! Pray and pray and pray for her. And after a moment of silence, Jesus concludes, if only you knew how much demerit she has accumulated. And his voice is extremely sad. March 24th, 1946, the 3rd Sunday in Lent. Awaited so long, with a yearning to hear the angelic words, so gentle, clear, and consoling. I must tell you, though, that from the moment you went away, an angel who does not seem to be mine has been constantly and visibly present for me. I say he does not seem to be mine because whereas Azariah shows himself to me by materializing in beauty, as I described for you at one point, in January 15th, 1946, this one is completely spiritualized, in a very intense light that only a miracle of God allows me to fix my gaze upon. And he has the incorporeal beauty of spiritual beings, and does not use his feet to move, but the 2 lights of his wings, and everything in him is light, his face, his hands crossed over his chest, and his extremely white immaterial robe. And I say hands, face, and robe, because we poor mortals can express ourselves only materially, to say what we see. But this very beautiful spirit, who never leaves me, and with whom my soul embarks upon continuous, loving conversations, has only the incorporeal condensation of his spirit in the form of a face, hands, and clothing, to present himself to my spiritual sight, and is thus reduced to the minimum necessary to fulfill this purpose, which really involves using improper, very material words to speak of his face, hands, and robe. In short, he looks to me like the angel at Gethsemane, who was light in the form of an angel. Footnote 212. This description appears in her work on the Gospel, corresponding to Luke chapter 22, verse 43. It looks to me like one of the many I have seen in the choirs in paradise. Oh, light, light singing in the boundless azures of heaven. He looks to me like one of the Christmas angels for the shepherds, one of the angels at Compito. Footnote 213. St. Andrea di Compito, where she was evacuated. See the notebooks, 1944, note 312. During one of the last nights of exile, they lifted me into ecstasy as they skimmed overhead, singing unrepeatable harmonies. I don't know who it is. I know his presence is my comfort. To me, he is more than gentle moonlight for the solitary, lost traveler, and gives me certainty that I am not alone, but in the best of company, with the best of guides, and on the best of ways, in the company of the angel of God, and on the way the angels follow. God's, I don't know who it is. I delight in his presence, but he does not disclose himself. Yesterday, Marta was away for 6 hours in Camaiore. Well, alone in my room for 3 out of 6 hours, I was so happy with this angelic presence that I even got physical relief from it. I got recollected in that meditation and contemplation, which may look like somnolence to strangers, but it is instead a spiritual ardor, and I was enraptured. What peace! But now Azariah shows himself and speaks. The luminous angel is not Azariah then, and I write. Footnote 214. We omit over 10 handwritten pages containing Azariah's commentary on the Mass for the third Sunday in Lent. And Azariah kneels to listen to Gabriel, who, increasing his light, greets me with the words, Ave Maria. Nothing but Ave Maria. He then utters a tremendous word. Oh, it really is tremendous, and gives me an order, so condemnatory in its motives, but I will take it with me to the grave. It is much more tremendous, the archangel says, than the secret of Fatima, and should not be revealed, because men, even these for whom it is issued, do not deserve to know it. And then the archangel, together with Azariah, who gets up again from his genuflection, sings, Let us bless the Lord. I reply, Thanks be to God, as Azariah taught me, and with them say, Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit. And now I also have the anguishing weight of this tremendous knowledge. Since the archangel greeted me with the words Ave Maria, I think it was he who spoke on December the 5th. Do you remember that card with a rule for Dora? Footnote 215, see note 121. But I do not ask about anything, and I remain in my uncertainty. Footnote 216. We omit 11 handwritten pages dated March 31st, 1946, containing Azariah's commentary on the Mass for the fourth Sunday in Lent. March 25th, 1946. In nomine Domini. And I finally take you up again, sweet gospel, the holy following of my Master along the ways of Palestine. After performing all the acts of obedience, I resume you, or rather, you resume me. I don't know if there's anyone reflecting on the unspoken but very instructive lesson the Lord provides with his silences, caused by 3 different motives. 1. Mercy towards the weakness of the sick, and at times utterly dying spokesman. 2. The punishment of silence for those behaving badly as regards his gift. 3. The lesson he is giving me, and this is what I want to talk about, on the duty of obeying always, even if it is an act of obedience which may strike us as inferior to the work we are suspending on that account. Oh, it is not easy to be voices. One always lives in the continual exercise of vigilance and obedience, and Jesus, Master as he is of the world, does not allow the act of obedience being performed by his instrument to be contravened when the act has been indicated by someone with the authority to indicate it. In these days I had to obey in doing the things which Father Migliorini had told me to do. They were rather bureaucratic and thus rather bothersome, but Jesus never intervened, because I had to obey, and exactly, totally, as Azariah said in his explanation of Holy Mass. Footnote 217, contained in the book of Azariah. But now, having done everything, I can contemplate you, O my Lord. Footnote 218. We omit about 34 handwritten pages containing the episode Simon of Jonah in his struggle and spiritual victory, and 2 other episodes dated March 27th and 28th of 1946 from the 3rd year of the public life. 3 notebooks following thereafter are also omitted in this volume because they contain only additional episodes in the same sequence, dated March 23rd to May 16th of 1946. April the 1st, 1946. Jesus says, "My blessing for my crucified one on the anniversary of her crucifixion." Footnote 219. She remained bedridden from April 1st, 1934 on. "And an act of obedience to me to be performed at once. You shall write to Father immediately, and you shall add what I tell you to news about yourself." And here is what he tells me. Jesus says, "On March 19th you wrote in the directions and presented an oral entreaty, and wrote and told the fathers to provide for you, having a priest nearby, who, by virtue of spiritual and chronological age, will be better prepared and capable of generating confidence about his fitness to act with holiness and seriousness and correctness than Father Mariano." Footnote 220. See note 178. "If you had not already been scourged in those days by excessive lashes of pain, I would have scourged you for that sentence. But I had mercy. You had by then squeezed out all the justice you were filled with, and did not have a crumb left to recall an aspect of my justice." The dictation on December 25th, 1945. "Recalling other painful experiences of yours as well, I showed you compassion. But now that, nourished by the union with your Lord, permitted by the calm, followed upon the disturbance resulting from so many distressing events taking place in a short period, your justice is once again strong within you, in order to make you understand my justice. Now that your fears of having to deal with another Father Pietro P. Footnote 221. Father Pennoni. See note 127. He is referred to on different occasions in the notebooks, 1944, beginning with the entry for August the 29th, 1944. Have been allayed. Now I will speak, to tell you that you have distrusted your Lord, his love for you, and his thought, to the point where you requested a priest other than Mariano. But what did I say on December 25th? I said, to whom should little John be entrusted when Father Migliorini is no longer in Viareggio? To the person among the servants of Mary in Viareggio who bears the name of my mother. Footnote 222. Who should little John be entrusted to? John. Here is Mary, your mother. Mary, here is your son John. The names indicate who to give you to, but how I would have preferred not to have Mary looked after by anyone else but Romualdo. And yet, it is good for you to get used to other voices, if only in order to lose other painful memories. December 25th, 1945. Little John must have Mariano as a father, and Mariano must have little John as a son. And if age is reversed in the two beings, the elements will remain intact, one who protects and one who is protected. And with the same result, the mutual elevation of the two whom I join, through the intercession of my mother. And you ought not to have even remotely considered that I could make a mistake, be imprudent, or not be solicitous towards my Maria. You were wrong to push your judgment forward to cover over mine with it. And you were wrong to judge without knowing, to judge Mariano by the memory of Pietro, to believe that all are the same as one who was not good. Never do so again. Trust your Lord. He wants nothing which is not a good for you. Remain united then, and be at once a mother and a daughter to him. My young priests, but it is precisely they who should be nourished with the supernatural, to overcome and neutralize the poisons of the rationalistic world, which ruins them. Do you know what my mother calls young priests? She calls them my children, and she loves them measurelessly. And if she sees one of them who does not drag along his mission, but bears it with joy, and flies over the ways of perfection, she rejoices as if it were a resurrection. And if she sees one of them who is at fault, and instead of turning from a priest into a saint, turns from a priest into a man, or even less, she suffers as if it were another sword thrust into her heart. Mary, my mother, has prayed to me for Mariano, and that ought to make him very dear to you. Will this union last? Will it not last? Do not be concerned. It will last just long enough to give Mariano a perfecting, which will be of use to him in his ministry. Let the wisdom that is entirely love act, and abide by the measures which I have prescribed for you. You shall tell Romualdo not to keep these words greedily for himself, but to submit them immediately to his superiors, so that they will make provision according to my will. And shall tell Romualdo that what was done in Viareggio must not be repeated in Rome, that is, strewing my words on all sides. Enough acts of imprudence and disobedience. In the dictation for Romualdo on March the 20th, I promised him that my angel and I would take his place in the complete direction of Maria. And that is being done. Like a child guided by her mother, Maria is guided by me and the angel in all things, not only spiritual, but also concerning everyday life. And she has already observed this guidance. Let Romualdo thus be at peace, considering that the angel and I cannot fail to guide properly, and that Maria gives grounds for serenity, because she is an obedient spirit, and lets herself be led without resistance, even though her will, if left to itself, would be totally contrary to mine. Let him be at peace then, and obey, as our Maria obeys. My peace be with you. And I feel the need to close this notebook after having carried out a reflection in this regard, which I had waited to conduct until today, in expectation of a reaction by my poor self, after the effort I made from March 17th to the 21st, and even before, to remain balanced during the storm which for you began on February 27th, but for me had begun, and violently, in December, and reached its peak between the 17th and the 21st of March. I know myself, and I know that I push on and on as long as there is a need to push on, to stick it out in order to support, guide, comfort, and so forth. But afterwards I take revenge, that is, my nature does, and there is desolation, discouragement, and nervousness. But not for the sake of boasting, since for me there is nothing to boast about, though there is reason to give praise to Jesus, who really changed me miraculously. I must say that after you left on the evening of the 21st, rather than the occurrence of what I anticipated, I experienced not only an absence of nervousness and discouragement, but even of the painful stupor which sometimes takes hold of me when an event which is very unpleasant for me has transpired. And instead of these things which did not appear, there came upon me a great, boundless peace, much deeper than the peace I had previously enjoyed. Truly, a heavenly peace. I have waited 3 days to say this because I could not convince myself I would remain in that state. I am now convinced. I have even gone through hours of physical agony in which my desire for you was generally strongest. But even in those hours, peace was inalterable and perfect. I believe this assertion ought to make you happy, so that the truth of God's working in me will shine increasingly in poor Maria, who on her own has all defects, and who has been freed from them one by her Jesus, and let us bless him for this. Even today's dictation, and it is a reproach for me, does not disturb me. I admit I was at fault. I thank the Master for having corrected me. I promise to avoid falling into such a failing again, and I remain at peace, as if, instead of reproaching me, Jesus had praised me. I well know that on my own I am not worth 2 obsolete coins. My only desire is to make Jesus happy. That alone. No one is more convinced of my indigence than I am. But this does not demoralize me. On the contrary, it makes me sing more forcefully than ever the Magnificat of praise to him who does all things in me. Personal note. The heart crisis today is probably as a result of the hour of such intense mutual love on Saturday, March 3rd, which Azariah refers to, footnote 223, in his commentary on March 31st, 1946. I thought I would die during that hour from excessive love. My physical heart was altered all day yesterday and gave way this morning. But Holy Week is approaching.